Good afternoon, E&E Nation. For those of you who may not be familiar, E&E stands for Events and Evaluations with Ant. I am your host, Ant, and I am going to play my J. Nail Owens slash just J. Nail role and predict the trilogy fight between Daniel DC Cormier and Stipe Miocic. Let's see, these two have done it twice previously. This hands down is the greatest trilogy in UFC heavyweight championship history. And mind you, we had a great one in Daniel Cormier's partner, Cain Velasquez, and his pairing with Junior Dos Santos. Now getting to the fight in itself. When you look at Daniel Cormier and you consider the fighter that he is, he hands down is one of the most well-versed heavyweights we've ever seen. A lot of people, they look at his size and they feel like, he's not built like a action figure or a statue, if you will. But when it comes to pure skill set, probably nobody does it better than DC. Like when you talk about all-around fighter, like he is representation, I guess, in the sense of Cain Velasquez. I mean, they offer so much. They both are excellent strikers. They both are excellent grapplers. They both can, lock in submissions. It's one of those things where when you look at he and Cain, the question is, what is it that these fighters can't do? And once upon a time, Cain Velasquez and Stipe Miocic was my dream match, but of course injuries came into play and things took place where Cain Velasquez was forced to retire. I hope Cain does return and try to give it one more run, because I still think Cain has something left in him. But if not, and he decides to coach, let him do that. But again, on to the fight in itself. I look at Daniel DC Cormier. I look at his ability to strike. I look at his ability to grapple and wrestle and embrace and distribute the grind, as he has a tendency to do. And I honestly look and I feel like there's nobody that Daniel Cormier cannot beat. I mean, he's tossed around guys like Josh Barnett and Frank Mir and Roy Nelson, Dan Henderson. He's been in there with the best of the best at 205 and beyond. I think, unfortunately, though, DC has a tendency to want to prove that he could do something better than another fighter. Like when you look at his fight with John Jones in the first bout, and DC to me was winning that fight prior to Jones's first takedown. I think DC got consumed in his pride, and he wanted to then prove to Jones that he was the better wrestler, and as a result, it cost him that fight. Even looking at the second fight with Stipe, DC wanted to prove that he could strike with Jones, and his corner was telling him, utilize your wrestling, utilize your grappling. And DC just has this thing with this obsession, if you will, of proving that he's better than someone in certain areas. And if he would have listened to his corner, then DC would have retained the title. When I look at Stipe Miocic, man, a lot of people forget that Stipe is a wrestler. First, the Croatian, like DC, can do it all. Stipe has incredible power. Look at how he, went to DC's gut in that second match and literally wore him out in the latter rounds of the fight, and then eventually got the knockout. Going back a little further, when he first won the heavyweight belt, he knocked out Fabricio Verdum on his back foot. He was backpedaling and he caught him with a right, and he put Verdum to sleep in order to become the UFC heavyweight champion, and then go on to record the most title defenses in UFC heavyweight history. This time around, statistics say that DC should get inside of Stipe's reach, get him in a clinch, dirty box, and utilize his wrestling in order for him to win. For Stipe, statistics and analytics will say that it'll be conducive for Stipe to utilize those underappreciated leg kicks, keep DC at distance and at bay with his reach, and then, you know, should he get him within close range, you know, just let those hands go as he did in a previous fight. But I'm gonna throw a caveat out there that no one is considering, that you're not gonna see on the bottom line, and it revolves around Nipsey Hussle and Kobe Bryant. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you might have seen this already at It's Just Ant Hoff. It's just ANTHOFF on Twitter. Today's Nipsey Hussle's birthday. And as we all know, Nipsey is no longer with us. Call me crazy, call me unconventional, call me insane, but Nipsey and Kobe will spiritually get together to watch this fight on tonight. And for those of you who may not know, there is a show on ESPN called Details, where basically some of the greatest minds in their respective sports serve as an analyst to, you know, break down game tape of certain fighters or football players or basketball players. And this was an idea that was generated by one Kobe Bryant. And so when Kobe Bryant came forth with this idea, many of you may not know this, but the UFC rendition of Details is because of Kobe Bryant. They met, I forget exactly where, but DC and Kobe had a conversation, and Kobe suggested to DC, why don't you be the face of the MMA/UFC rendition of Details? And DC had mentioned how honored he was, and you know, he accepted the role. And DC has been remarkable in his role as the lead analyst, not only for Details, but, you know, as the play-by-play analyst for fights. I think something divine is going to happen on tonight. Nipsey and Kobe are going to watch this fight on Nipsey's birthday. Nipsey, who's celebrating his birthday, will watch this fight spiritually with Kobe Bryant, who is, you know, the mastermind behind Details, and, you know, suggested that DC should be the analyst for Details. Some sort of divine intervention between those two are going to come into play. I don't know how. I know the odds are supposedly against DC, but I have divine intervention coming into play, and I have it doing so in a manner where DC is going to put on his most memorable performance as a fighter, and he is going to ride off into the sunset as the UFC champion. Keep in mind, Kobe Bryant, the creator and the mastermind behind Details, put on one of his best performances in his very last game against the Utah Jazz, dropping 60 points. I expect DC to have a Kobe Bryant type night that's equivalent to a Kobe Bryant 60-point night, and he is going to finish Stipe. And I love them both, mind you. I love them both. Like, you're asking me to choose between my two children. I have deliberated. I have thought about this one thing over and over again. And when I woke up realizing it was Nipsey Hussle's birthday, and, you know, both Nipsey and Kobe are sports fans, divine intervention is somehow going to come into play with this fight, and God up above, and they're going to see to it that DC, Daniel Cormier, retires. And when it's all said and done, we're going to hear Bruce Buffer bellow and new one more time for Daniel DC Cormier. That's Ant's sugar sweet pick in reference to the main event on tonight. Be on the lookout for events and evaluations with Ant coming in the form of both a podcast and a blog. Sit back, relax, buckle up, and we're going to see how this fight plays out. But yeah, something divine is going to happen, and DC will ride off into the sunset as your new UFC heavyweight champion. Be blessed, be safe, be easy. Let's do it again.